How's it going? John Rael here with the lovely Anna Maltese. We just caught, or a couple days ago, we caught That's Not Funny.
Indeed.
And it's a film by Mike Celestino.
Hey, Mike.
Who's super talented guy. I got turned on by his project, which started out as a Kickstarter project last year. There was a teaser trailer which was filled with, a couple of people who I know and love, Paul Provenza, Emery Emery, and it was all about basically what are you allowed to do in comedy and even art in general. Like, are there rules? Is there some stuff you're not allowed to joke about that nobody should ever joke about? And so it was an examination of those kinds of questions, with potentially a series of interviews of dozens of comedians all across the world. He went in a slightly different direction, and I'm not exactly sorry he did. Now, Anna, you had never really heard about this project before we actually saw it, had you?
Not before you brought it up to my attention, no. And I really didn't know what to expect either. I heard a little bit about the interviews with comedians. I'd heard some whispers of backstory about not being able to do it, and a little bit about why, which was kind of, taking a backing. But I did like the finished product a lot. I liked the questions he posed. I liked the, sort of the very nuanced journey he, took the audience through. And I really liked the history that he goes through of comedy and performing.
Well, I think that's exactly what I would call it, is a pretty definitive history of comedy. Like you see comedy referenced sometimes in breakdowns of history, but this one was specifically like the history of comedy, not the history of the Marx Brothers, not the history of vaudeville, the history of comedy in its entirety, and it kind of blew me away. History
buffs are going to love it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, regardless of like what you're into, history buffs will definitely love it.
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who backed it and who was looking forward to, all the interviews he could potentially get with comedians talking about rape jokes and support the troop jokes and, anything else we're not supposed to joke about, I'm not disappointed. It was really concise, fair-minded a history of comedy and a history of the controversy as I think you will ever get.
I'll agree. It's kind of and what I liked about it was that he posed more questions than he answered. Like there were no definitive like yes, no. I mean, he really, it's kind of a thinker. Like it's like a Henrik Ibsen play in a way. You go home and you're kind of like, wow, okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Was she supposed to leave or was she supposed to stay? What's the brave thing to do? No, I do think he took one stand. I think he took one very important stand, and it's a stand that I take myself, even though like when I hear myself say it out loud, it sounds so hyperbolic and so black and white. I'm like, am I allowed to have an opinion that is that fucking heavy? Which is that, if one thing is not okay to joke about, nothing's okay to joke about. Like if you can't joke about this tragedy, you can joke about no tragedies. And that's my thought on the matter. It's like Cards Against Humanity, removing cards. It's like if you have to remove this one card because you deem it to be either offensive or inappropriate, you have to remove all the cards.
Yeah, when you start picking at one thread, like what else kind of unravels? And I'm going to go along with that.
Yeah?
As well. Yeah. The thing that you mentioned before about talking with one of the comedians, I don't know if I can name them, but I'll maybe not, about the one thing that you can't joke about.
Oh, Paul Provenza. That was a recorded interview. He's fine talking about that.
About like you have to support the troops.
The verboten topic point of view is that you don't support the troops. very interesting territory to go into.
And I remember pre 9/11 listening to Bill Hicks go off about the military and, you know, what? Anyone dumb enough to want to join the military should be allowed in. So gays should be allowed in, you know, whatever. Anybody who wants to, fuck it, whatever. So the idea that even among comedians, that there's like that one untouchable thing is kind of bothersome to me. I mean, I come from a military family. I fucking don't see a problem joking about it.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of comedians out there that offend me, and I think there's a lot of comedians out there that are quote unquote giant douchebags. But my favorite point that
Dane Cook. Sorry.
Who?
Oh no, I didn't say anything.
I didn't even catch the joke.
Dane Cook, sorry. Not really a douchebag, just
yeah, Dane Cook. Like I wouldn't consider
a one joke.
Yeah,
right?
Like maybe if he was racist, I'd have a better excuse to hate him. But he's just a douche. I think there's a lot of true assholes who, you know, on a personal level, I think might very well be immoral, awful, whatever people, and I think the comedy they do is terrible. However, Mike brought up what I think is a brilliant fucking point, which is bad people should be in art. You know? I would, you know, in another way I kind of thought about it is I would rather have a terrible fucking human being grabbing a mic than grabbing a podium.
You do realize that mics and podiums usually go together, right?
They do have mics on podiums, but you get the symbolism, the imagery, right?
I do.
Okay, is this imagery failing on you? I thought you were a fan of politics.
I am.
Are comedians standing behind podiums these days? That'd be interesting.
Oh, that'd be a new take.
But,
No, I think they need the freedom to walk around.
Yeah, I would rather an asshole grab a mic than a podium.
I think so. And not to go Godwin, but, you know, Hitler being a failed artist and all.
Wouldn't you rather Hitler just be that douchebag fucking artist? Like, oh, that's the painter that hates.
Well, he also brought up Hitler as this, like, awesome font of humor, and it's totally true. Like, you can... he has the hair and the mustache, and he has Mel Brooks has made lots of jokes at Hitler's expense, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find any comedian or sitcom or cartoon that has not poked fun at Hitler, so it was a beautiful through line of this movie. You know, the Hitler thing, like, and he's such a terrible, horrendous human being. Why do we make such light of it, you know? And I think of it, I guess, the way Mike does and the way a lot of people do, which is kind of like, you know, if you can't laugh about tragedy, what fucking hope do you have?
Yeah, it's a way of dealing with it and turning it around, and, you know, processing it and coming to a better place with it.
My one criticism, my one sort of... and this isn't a criticism. This is more like a question. This would be my question to Mike, not so much like a slam. Because the film is mostly clips. It's mostly clips of comedy and cartoons and comedians and politics. And, you know, it's mostly just this giant sort of History Channel, you know, clip show explaining the history of comedy. Mm-hmm. The times in between, though, when you're looking at Mike, you are just looking at Mike. And it is a blank wall, and he is staring directly at you. It reminded me of, like, fucking Wayne's World. Like, Wayne takes off, Garth is there. Hey, I'm like Celestino. Having a great time, you know? And it was just the weirdest, like, is he looking directly at us? You're
cornering Mike Celestino and backing him up against a wall, basically, the entire time.
And Mike was, you know, it was on the big screen. He's like 20 by 30 feet. I'm like, he's still looking at me. And I don't know if it was an artistic intention. Like, no, we're not going to go that cliche, pretentious, shallow depth of field, panning, you know, indie bullshit route.
So the taxonomy should obviously be changed for monotremes. I mean, they're obviously not mammals. They have no business being in the mammal club, and the fact that they got in somehow via this cataloging process is incredibly suspect. Mammals shouldn't have one hole for pooping, pissing, and fucking. Mammals should have nipples, and the fact that the duck-billed platypus has venom at all. I mean, mammals shouldn't have venom. We're better than that.
Or if they just didn't think about it at all. They're just like, oh yeah, turn the camera on. This is where I'm going to do my filler bit. But
maybe they didn't. Maybe deadlines came up and they were like, let's just knock it out.
I don't know. But it was the weirdest thing. I mean, you watch even Bethany Moda or whatever, and like even that little girl is framing her shots and like, you know, less headroom and downward angles and colorful backgrounds, and I'm like, Mike is on the screen.
There you go. But all in all, really good. I had a blast. I agree with a lot. You know, I worked on a show that was routinely complained about in that it, you know, offended someone or other at some point in time.
And Mike gave you guys a lot of praise.
Yes, he did. He gave a big shout out to The Simpsons many times.
Though I will say he said that he only followed it through a certain number of seasons, and
right,
he
up
said
till season 13. I think.
And he said that's when it started losing its quality. And I want to show Mike Movie Bob's video. Like, The Simpsons is still just as good. It's just times have gotten faster. You know, Simpsons is pretty much an old technology. It's an old formula. It can't keep up with our references and our wit anymore.
It can up till about 6 months.
Yeah.
And it's still working on a little bit of an outdated production model. You have about a 6-month lead-in time for production on any given episode. You have about 7 episodes running at any time. And that was one thing that we had going against us when, you know, I was on the show, you know, when the news hit about Americans getting drugs from Canada because they would be cheaper. It took us 6 months to get there, and South Park, of course, can turn it around in like 6 days.
I'd say that The Simpsons is literally exactly as good. It's just so many other outlets have gotten quicker and funnier, so it can't compete anymore.
Gotta say, it was fun doing the gay marriage episode. I think it can compete. I mean, it can obviously compete for ratings. If it's still on the air, that means that they've still made
TV show.
Made the decision to not, you know, swipe it and put in anybody else's pet project.
Network TV sounds like a pipe dream these days.
Crack pipe dream.
Like a fucking dreams of grandeur. We're going to have a network TV show. Shut the fuck up. You're going to get on network television.
These computers are going to make it big in people's homes one day. They're going to have them in every home one day.
God.
Yeah. I think I liked the distinction he drew between, because again, it was a nuanced kind of thing. You know, he raised a lot more questions than he answered. And one of the things, two of the instances that he brought up in order to raise this particular point I'm coming to were the Michael Richards incident and a Daniel Tosh incident where, and they were both in live. Here's the thing: they were both in live stand-up comedy routines. Daniel Tosh apparently made a sort of tongue-in-cheek rape threat to a woman in the front row or whatever, and they were both at hecklers. And the thing that I don't know, the question that got brought up in my mind was: don't comedians have standard ripostes to hecklers? At one point. At some point, it I guess gets too much for them. They lose their shit and they stop being funny and they respond in an emotional way. And even then, even if their standard is to do something offensive or racist or sexist, the fact is, in my mind, it's like if you are responding to a heckler, that heckler is, first of all, they are no longer participating as an audience member, and the comedian is no longer participating as a comedian. That is something else is happening on stage between those two individuals. And if Michael Richards is being a racist asshole to that guy, Michael Richards should probably apologize to that guy, and they should hash it out and not, kiss Jesse Jackson's ass. Yeah, and I like that I'm just saying I like that he made that distinction between a joke that is an actual joke that's made and somebody, having an uncontrollable emotional reaction where it stops being a joke and starts being something weird. Yeah, because that's no longer a comedy bit. Yeah. That's no longer part of the routine. Yeah, so, I kind of assumed that, and I had never seen either of those two instances. So I had always assumed that all comedians had standard retorts in the back of their pocket to totally cut down hecklers. one of the DJs at the strip club I used to work at, when somebody was getting out of hand, would get on the microphone and go, "That's okay. I remember when I had my first duels."
See, and in and in that respect, though, I might say you're actually kind of blaming the victim here.
Ooh.
Like a comedian, a performer on stage is doing his job, and an audience member chooses no longer to be an audience member and to attack that comedian. And comedian should have handled it better.
What was a comedian wearing at that point?
What was Look at how Michael Richards was dressed.
Yeah, slut. The history was awesome. And he held up 3 comedians that were of essential importance. One was George Carlin. The other one was Lenny Bruce. That was the big one. And then the third one?
Richard Pryor.
Richard Pryor.
How'd you forget about Richard Pryor?
I was not...
Because he's black.
I was set on George Carlin. Mostly because what I was thinking about was the rhetorician aspect of him. Because George Carlin would always, describe himself as a true rhetorician. Someone who, from history, would, speak truth to power, but do it in a format that would not get him beheaded. And I like that Mike brought that background in, and brought it in, with George Carlin, essentially. Richard Pryor was so awesome. We used to trade CDs of his back and forth at work.
Oh, really?
They would be circulating. They'd be circulating throughout the cubicles.
I always preferred Bill Cosby.
He was awesome.
Who also gets a big shout out in this movie.
As deservedly so.
Our friend Joseph Swam got a big shout out in this movie. Although they had part of his name blanked out, which afterwards we talked to Mike, and Mike was like, "Yeah, I gotta tell my editor to take that off because Joe's totally cool with it, and Joe would definitely want to, be up there. So that'll be changed for, later editions. My name was up there twice.
Yay.
So, because I've been a big supporter of this project, not really financially. I gave a little donation, but I don't have much money, but just morale, a big cheerleader for it, because it's a documentary that examines, what it means to do comedy and what is allowed or what should ever not be allowed. And I support any kind of discussion like that ever.
Absolutely. More comedy. Use it for everything good. Seek it out. Use it as medicine.
Even if you want to use it for something terrible. I'd rather a bad person have a joke than a gun. Let the assholes do their art, people. And if you don't like it, turn it off, walk away. And if they personally engage you, that's a whole different thing. They're no longer doing their comedy routine. Anything else?
Go see the film.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Hopefully it'll be available soon. I know they're going to be sending DVDs and Blu-rays to certain levels of Kickstarter backers.
Emery's bit was fun.
Emery, yeah. His Mike talked a little bit about jokes that are too soon, and I think the day of the Boston bombings, Emery had a Vine video of his smelly feet causing the catastrophic.
That's what
was.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it no longer enjoyable to you now that you know?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
The one thing, one of the very first things that bugged me about 9/11 was the feeling that there would be nothing allowed to be funny after that. Like when they canceled Bill Maher's show. Say what you will about, Bill Maher.
Screw Bill Maher!
He has definitely a mixed bag. But he actually came out and started saying things and addressing things and making jokes, and he was shut down immediately. And that was a very sad and very concerning day. So I think the quicker we're allowed to joke about tragedy, I think is healthier, I think is good.
I liked it. I definitely want to see it again. I definitely want to just watch it again because there was so much in it. It was so rich. It was so, filled with so many clips and points and variety. And I need to watch it again. I need to break it up in sections and think about each section. It was so rich and definitive and concise.
a lot of history, a lot of politics, a lot of history of the MPAA and the FCC and the whole
Hays
regulatory
Code
thing. Yeah, just really textured and full, and yeah, I think I would like to see it again.
I mean, as
too.
as a backer who originally saw this as sort of an aristocrats that talks about the real issues, I'm not really disappointed. This was a fantastic, definitive piece of, you know, of comedy as a history. And I don't know. I was talking to him after. I think he should pitch it to the History Channel or something, because this was really fantastic. This is like it's his own Ken Burns or something.
That was the exact term that people were using.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you didn't hear, like, I think Emery used it, and I think he himself used it too.
Oh.
Like, he wanted it to be the Ken Burns thing, and you know, I kept waiting for the shot of like a battlefield of comedians dying on the ground, and like the narration and like voiceover of one comedian writing home to his sweetheart, General McClellan's got us on the run.
Slightly opaque over a battlefield.
Oh yeah, and like, "O fount of heavenly wisdom" playing softly in the background.
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, liked it.
Awesome.
I've never seen your smile.